Hello, Stu.
Hi.
Thank you for joining today. And this is a Spiritual Context podcast. I'm very happy to talk with you today.
I'm happy to talk with you and happy to have you here.
Thank you. The first question, let me see if I can ask this well. You've been practicing for a long time. You've been practicing inquiry for a long time, and what have you discovered? What have you realized is the ultimate truth? What is the highest truth you've realized?
Mm. Well, putting aside the descriptors being used, I would say coming upon stillness. I would say an inner stillness, but it's not separate from everyone and everything, the sun, the moon, the stars, the universe. I want to put words on it. It's the ground of being. And it's here right now. It's always here. It just gets covered over, which is okay. It gets covered over with a busy mind and our preoccupations, wants and fears. But it's here.
And how does what we ordinarily call the world, with its myriad events, how does that relate to the stillness?
I'm trying to look at the way it's asked as in terms of relating. In a sense, it's not related. It's all happening with stillness as the ground. I can say it's all happening in stillness. It sounds strange in a way, but so I don't think of activity and change and all that's going on as itself being still, but the it's happening in stillness in huge, limitless space. And to answer your question, there's looking right now. I'm not trying to think of what I thought about it yesterday or last year, but looking right now.
Say I'm a college student, a young college student, and I come to you and I hear you talk about the stillness, and I ask you, how can I too discover this stillness? Because all I see is this world of populated by many people and objects, names and forms. How can I too discover this stillness? What would you say?
Well, to take that interest inward. And not to take something on that I've said or that one's necessarily read, but an interest to find out for oneself what may be being pointed to or talked about. And whether that means taking some time out and just being still, but it can, if it's a question that really grabs one, it doesn't leave one. It can hover there in the background, so to speak. It's true with any question of this nature. I mean, if we need to look up, the population of New York State, you do the best research you can, or any number of things like that. But a question like what's being pointed to when something is talked about, such as spacious stillness. If you just put the books aside, what one has read, and just sit, walk, lay down with that wondering, questioning. And you're not knowing what, and not knowing in the intellectual sense. So that what's been read and just leave just put it aside. And wonder. It's one's life. That's the way it's seen here, as well as in discovering what gets in the way. I don't want to speak for other trainings or disciplines or whatever, but it's not experienced here as a one and done endeavor, so to speak.
So when I try to, again, as a young college student, when I try to get still, my body's still, and there's breathing, and if my awareness is more subtle, I can feel my heartbeat, feel sensations, and then there are thoughts. Where is the stillness?
It's not a location. It's again, the words are limited. Words are always limited, and think of as pointers. But it's the back. One could say the background of it all. So it's not separate from the sound of the fan right now, and as you describe, the beating heart, but all that comes and goes. All that can be sensed by this organism comes and goes. In a few moments, that fan will probably stop. Heart beating will hopefully, at least during this interview, will not stop. We'll get through this interview, and but if it does stop, so what? What of it? Well, you might call 911 or something. I mean, don't have to go all out there with imagination, but the sensations change, moods change, events, weather, all change. But this, if you want to call it awareness, presence, stillness, it doesn't change.
sometimes, say, when I sit, there might be a thought or feeling or an event or a memory that continually arises. Earlier you said what gets in the way and might be experienced as getting in the way of intuiting that stillness. So this memory, let's say, might be very, very sticky. What do I do then?
Yeah, if something is more than just, what some event that occurred earlier or expecting a delivery later today or whatever, the kind of passing um, thoughts and concerns and all, but something, like you say, sticky, sometimes it's called like leftover business or um, then just sit and wonder, like, well, what's going on? Like, not trying to push it away, um, but with a curiosity to allow it to tell its story, so to speak, um, and then let it be. Like let not trying to get a result, whatever, but a turning into an interest to what is going on, and who knows, something hadn't noticed before about it and comes up, or but it's tricky not to expect necessarily. Just to see if something reveals itself, but not trying to push something away. Because who's pushing it away? Who is it that wants the stillness? The wanting itself is already, it's here. So what's but if there's a feeling of wanting this, see how it goes. I'm not going to tell somebody what to do or not to do, or but I'm just sharing what I've come upon here, and that is, there's no need to push away anything, but to see it, in awareness, and that's can be enough at times. But in the example you gave, something just sticky and so, and there's awareness of it, the repetitiveness of it, and then to wonder. Openly, welcomingly, rather than pushing away. It's a different attitude of what we call the body mind.
So the crucial factor seems to be a curious wondering or looking at, allowing, not pushing away
What comes up? Yeah.
with whatever comes up.
Yeah.
So it's not even seeking the stillness.
No, who's the
Right.
seeker?
But what if what comes up is something like, let's say, I want to be a millionaire, and that desire comes up, and many people actually may not even see it, but I might have the choice to pursue that desire, allow it to come up and pursue that desire, turn away from that desire. And if I understand you correctly, you're saying neither, but to just observe and be with that desire.
Well, the fact that one is even wondering about it to begin with, as opposed to being all in and gung-ho to make a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like, there's already some kind of wondering or pulling back or pausing, or because a lot of what we do as human beings, and I'm not judging it for the moment, but is pretty automatic and pretty wired with very little, maybe to no awareness. We're just sort of moved by events and conditionings and desires. Are they mine or inherited and parents? Whatever, wherever all this comes from. So can be very automatic with the belief system that in the case of making millions, that's going to bring contentment, happiness, many things associated with that, security, which isn't to say that on a certain level, there isn't something to having some roof over one's head, enough food to eat, all those things. And also enmeshed in this is this me, like this phantom me that I'm going to be special, maybe, or how people are going to now look at me, or how one even thinks about oneself. All that, is it all happening just unawares, But the example you give, it implies already a pausing and sort of wondering how far that, wondering and questioning goes. I don't know that anyone can dictate that for another. And one may just find out as one goes, leaving it open, maybe seeing where some of these pursuits go. How do they impact one? How do they impact our relationship? All of that. Just leave it open and watch. So then it's not coming from some commandment or someone's ideas about what one should do or shouldn't do, but comes out of watching some awareness here of of all of it, the whole thing, how it impacts this whole nervous system, the organism.
Is there an objective to the watching?
I wouldn't say there's an objective to awareness or presence. But if, going back to the example you gave before of like something that's kind of sticky coming up, again, I'm not sure I would call it an objective when there might be a pausing and like just a wondering about what is going on, because it's still being left open. So we don't know what's going to come up or where it's going to lead to. One could think of, like, there's the objective of, well, if I could just see more clearly what's going on, I'll be more in touch with the stillness, and then that becomes an objective kind of implied uh, in wondering. But one could see that too, and that could be seen, and then maybe back to just an interest. Is that making sense?
It is making
Okay.
sense. It's
Yeah, I just
making
wanna.
perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because the way it is being framed, there is neither an objective of understanding nor of transformation. There is no seeking. And if there is a seeking, that too itself becomes a point or a content for observation. And that's it.
And is there a seeker? It can be a question, koan, whatever you want to call it. Or what is the seeker? Sometimes people find it tricky to say who because it implies like there is a who. So whatever resonates for one, like what is the seeker? Is there? And if so, what is it constitutes? It all images and ideas about me and the object of what's being sought after.
I've heard you use the word me circuit.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain what that means?
Yeah. Well, what that's pointing to is the way this organism is wired, so to speak. The whole nervous system, which is all enmeshed in the muscles and all the chemicals, how thought can so quickly trigger this wiring and emotional response. So the conditioning that may be unique to this particular organism, at least that's some of what is meant and pointed to by this me circuit. And awareness can shed light on the workings and operation of and non-judgmentally. There isn't judgment in awareness itself. Judging may come up, but then that can also be seen, aware, or whatever words one relates to. It just reveals.
In your own daily life, say, for instance, today,
Mm-hmm.
how, I don't know if this question, given the way we're talking, would even make sense, but how much do you operate from the me circuit
Mm-hmm.
or from stillness? or maybe abide is the better word. How much do you abide in stillness or operate from the me circuit?
You pointed to today as an example, like maybe how things have gone up to now, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. um, who knows the next hour or two? Um, well, there's a lot that's has a certain I was going to say automaticness to it. But I'm not sure that's the appropriate word, but it's getting in the car, heading to the Y, like knowing where to go. That's all part of this, and that's not a problem, right? I mean, there's information, there's um, uh, familiarity with the roads, with signs, with um, all of that to go. Not a problem, right? It all happens. But then you come upon they're doing some construction work, okay, down on Clinton. I don't know if you're familiar with, if I describe where it is, and it's especially in the early hours when it's rush hour, it ends up getting really backed up. And it wasn't like that this morning, but if there were a sense of like, I need to get where I'm going, this is in my way, blah, blah, blah. That's this reactivity, wanting it to be otherwise, and all is part of, I would call, me circuit. And to the degree that starts impacting the system, the body, and tensing up, or whatever, then, as was said much earlier, the awareness starts to get covered over. What I remember, because you wanted to ask specifically about this morning, so I'll try to answer that as honestly as possible. What I remember this morning is some of those thoughts sort of coming, but I didn't, it was clear I didn't need to get somewhere by a certain time, so there wasn't that kind of pressure going on anyway. Now we could also talk about what do we mean by how does pressure happen, and it's all interesting stuff to sort of watch, right? But if in this example, there really was aware there was no need to feel that way. Well, not just a need, because you can't go. I mean, you're sitting there, you can't really go anywhere. But the thoughts weren't a problem about the construction. So can one say, well, that's sort of stillness operating? I don't really think about it in that way. But the moments where there's just being here with whatever is here, and not being in opposition to it, and all I guess one could say is a reflection of presence. Again, I don't think reflection is quite the right word or a good one. I'm trying to think of anything else. It's all, things. Don't remember.
It does seem from what you say that when one finds that one is in some way wishing things to be different or in opposition, and one is stuck in that mode, that would indicate that one has become identified with the me circuit. But as soon as you get that indication, you're again observing it already.
Yeah, I mean, at any moment, and I have to be careful. What I was trying to really, as honestly as possible, answer your question. I don't want to give you the implication like that things don't come up.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just say that for the record. Um, but yeah, at any moment of noticing what's going on here and there being some space around it, how did you put it? Because I'm sort
Or
of agreeing with what you.
I don't remember. I think I said we are back in observation or
Yeah, yeah.
awareness.
Then
Yeah.
there's yeah, that already there's awareness. Um, uh, the body may still be like maybe some tension or whatever, still residual from a sort of movement to away and wanting things otherwise and all. But it's, the presence still is never far away. uh, there's no distance except for the what is being triggered here, and um, that creates the distance. But the moment it's seen, as you said, observed, then we're here. There's here-ness.
What happens when you sleep?
When I sleep, or just
When sleep occurs?
I don't know if I could honestly, talk about that in relation to um, I mean, there are times where, upon waking up, one is, if there's been no dreams that one recalls or whatever, or there's the sense, although one's already woken up, so it's tricky, of like nothing, nothingness, so to speak, or um, but again, that's it's after the fact, so too. So, um, and I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'd have to say I don't know about um, sleep. Is your question what happens? Where is awareness in like deep sleep? Or I don't think.
Well, I've heard teachers, some Buddhist masters, but in other traditions too, who talk about even when the body and mind are asleep,
Mhm.
the what they might call the light of awareness as being unchangeably the light of awareness and them abiding as such. So sleep occurs, they might say, to the me circuit, not to the
Mhm.
light of awareness.
Mhm.
And to the degree we are identified with the me circuit, we wake up and say, I slept.
Mhm.
Um, but to the light of awareness itself, there is neither sleep nor waking. I was wondering if that's something in your own experience
Mhm.
or something akin to that.
Well, yeah, I don't want to speak for how other people put it, but I would just go back to what I said a while ago, where when one wakes up from, I don't know if you could even call it a deep sleep. I don't want to, what scientists would call it or whatever, but where there's like just a sense of nothing, nothingness or whatever. I guess you could say, I mean, I wouldn't, if they're saying that's the light of awareness or awareness, this nothing, a nothingness that all contains everything. just say that. But whether that's what's being referred to, I don't know. I can't speak.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only thing, at least coming up right now, that I could think of that might relate to that. But our awareness doesn't need an object. It doesn't need anything. It just is. It's not dependent on anything. So I guess one could say it depended on awake, like the way we usually think of it, or asleep, the way we usually think of it. Or dependent on this organism. It's what is here now and how it manifests. I mean, it was here before Stew arrived, and it will be here after Stew leaves. One way to put
it. How did you discover this? Was it like a retreat session or meditation session and you came upon this awareness and stillness, or did it gradually kind of permeate?
I really want to answer these things as honestly as possible, but I'm also trying to be careful not to make something out of it, or that anyone listening to this makes anything out of it, or because some of these things people experience as children, as different parts of one's times in one's life, and have not necessarily been interested in quote unquote meditative work or whatever. So, but if I, think back to what I can remember, which isn't so much childhood experiences, but well, there were some experiences when I did, I was in college. I did a fair amount of psychedelics, and they weren't used to sort of get high, or was I'm very interested in expanding consciousness and going for walks in nature, and so that there were probably times then that something greater than our usual way we think about ourselves and the world, I think was in abeyance, but that was through use of, not to put it down, because it has its impact, and a lot of people, the Roshi at Rochester Zen Center, when I first went there and joined there, used to say that a lot of the people that came there had come from using psychedelics, and people on staff there and all of that. So he was very well aware of that phenomenon. But when I got into Zen and Zen training, and going to the sesshin, which was very very intense retreats, which were very focused at that time on something in Japanese lingo called kensho, or insight, and opening experience. And the first session I went to with Roshi Kapleau, it was a 4-day, and what had grabbed me, even when I'd become a student, and at the time I had quit college and joined a fledgling Zen center in Sharon Springs, which became one of the first affiliates of the Rochester Zen Center. So I was already, very enmeshed in that training, and in sitting, and what was very resonant for me was this question: who am I? Or just who, but and that first session, well, it was a 4-day, and by day 3, not to go into all the details of what led there, I threw everything I had that was there into it. This question, I was up all night sitting with it, and there was a sense of come hell or high water kind of thing. And I remember in the morning I didn't go to breakfast, and just this question was very, very powerful. And I remember it very vividly. In the between the rounds of sitting, there was something called kinhin, which is walking through the zendo. And I remember it was, I think, in the morning sitting. I remember walking through the zendo, and this question. There was nothing else. It's just, and what I remember is everything going black. What I don't remember is how I was still walking, and not but banging into it. But that's what I remember, for at least. Maybe it was a split second when everything went black. And there was nothing. Just darkness. And then outside the window, there was birdsong. And it didn't feel like it was my voice or whatever, and that's all it is. And I just remember, I think, tears coming, and just just everything just opened up. And and I remember that lasting for a number of days. When I remember going back to Sharon Springs, and people were like, "What happened?" But it was, But so I don't know. Sometimes Tony Packer, who was my Zen teacher, then worked with her for decades beyond the Zen Center days. She used to say, when a switch is flipped, it can't be flipped back. So I understood what she meant. But how that enters into, is that the right way to put it? Enters into one's life, presents itself in one's life, is a never-ending thing. It's not it's not an experience. It's one's life.
In that event in particular, so you said there are a number of things I want to ask. The first, you said there was a blackness,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a bird sound,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was a knowingness, let's say. This is it.
Not mentally. There wasn't
Mm-hmm.
there was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Just actually, let me back up. When I say nothing, what did come up? I said the tears, just a release and a sense of love and compassion, if you want. And the words don't even touch it, really, of what bubbled up. And it wasn't to anyone. It was just there.
And that's so the sense of, let's say, an impersonal love continued on. That's what lasted for a few days, you were saying.
Well, it was more just a sense of freedom, I think, more than anything. Like this thing that had occupied to such a degree wasn't there, and as I recall, I mean, it's a long time ago, and I mean, I remember the moments in the Zendo pretty well, but I just remember like something was feeling freer.
We started out by talking about stillness,
Mm-hmm.
which I would think is similar to an experience of profound peace, calmness.
Mm-hmm.
And now it also seems that awareness may also have the quality of love or compassion.
Mm-hmm. Well, um, how to put it? It rises out of that, out of awareness.
As Tony would say, the switch cannot be flipped back off. So did these kinds of experiences recur more frequently, or was this one-time explosive event and then more diffuse
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was nothing
permeation?
like that again. That, although I tried,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what happens. You have this, and then and you're sort of egged on in a way, and but but more like what you were saying, um, you know, insight here or there, things being revealed. Mhm.
Has the quality of love also become more dominant in one's quality of experiencing?
Mm. Well, I think I would say, in the sense of there being the possibility of more space, I don't know, I guess you could use the word acceptance. Um, uh, Interest to understand where someone's coming from, as opposed to just immediately uh, not just judging, but like negating altogether a person, or um, uh, which isn't to say, I don't want to say there are moments, where it's like, oh. Um, so in that sense, if you want to call that a kind of a embodiment of love, or yeah, I think anytime there's a pausing, there's some space, there's some interest to better understand. And the best, not that certain kinds of understanding don't have their place, by reading about a culture, or why a person's history, why they might have be the way they are, or it has its place. But the best way we understand each other is by understanding oneself. And so that provides that space, because one can see right here in oneself that, as some people say, but for the grace of God, but for whatever, I don't know how the saying goes oneself, or in other words, that to a large degree we share that human consciousness with its tendencies, and that's why this awareness, presence is so vital, so important. Because if at any moment the tendency to react, to want to get back at someone in a gross or subtle way, the moment that is seen and not gone with, it's a momentous moment. It's not going to bring peace to the Middle East or Ukraine or whatever, but for that moment, there isn't a contributing to what separates us. Because that's the fundamental truth, is we are not separate from each other, from this world. And it's really difficult. I mean, I wish there were words that could convey what's meant by that. Because it's beyond that the personality or particular interests, different languages, it's beyond all of that. Including that we might share the same interests, but that's not what's meant. Maybe it's coming out of that stillness that is seen. Because that stillness it encompasses everyone and everything. They talk about these probes, it's amazing, that go way, way out into space,
Mm-hmm.
It's unfathomable. I mean, an astrophysicist could explain it and all, but how far out these probes might go, deeper and deeper into what? And is that right here? Do you sense that right now?
Mm-hmm. Earlier, when you were talking about your experience at the Zen Center, at the Rochester Zen Center, you were talking about how you were holding this question, who am I, in mind. What does that mean? How does one do, what exactly were you doing? That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, now, perhaps decades later, what would you say is how do you hold questions in mind now? Is it similar or different, or do you?
Well, to go back to your first part of your question, in that sesshin and in that um, if you want to say the last day or evening or through the night or in that morning, the question wasn't just um, a heady question. The best that I can describe it as was the one's entire being was that question. It permeated completely, so that there was nothing else. There was just that, and a need. I think I had said before, kind of a hell, come hell or high water, a need to know, as though one's life depended on it. Really, I mean, I think I could say that at the time. Um, and then as best as I can remember, that it dropped, and I think that was simultaneous with this blackness. Um, yeah, darkness, just moving in darkness for I don't know how, might have been a second, whatever, until hearing the bird song and everything was just, let's just open up. So what were you going to ask
Well,
something?
so I get what you're saying. The crucial point was that it was that no matter what kind of drivenness with the question, that attitude. But were you like in traditional koan retreats and sessions, people are meditating all night, sitting in the meditation posture all night and chanting the question, shouting the question, or if the koan is mu and they're doing
Mm.
mu, 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 and with from their
Mm-hmm.
hara, with their
Mm-hmm.
whole being. Is is that similar to what you were doing?
No,
No.
no. I don't want to speak for, because I did plenty of that too in
Mm-hmm.
subsequent session. It was a way of gathering energies to stay up late, and be sort of more focused and with this one focusing the mind and all. For me, at that time, was this, it wasn't just a word to be repeated. Um, Beyond the word, who was this need to know? A sincere need to know, and not just repeating something or trying to get into some focused thing or whatever. Yeah, I don't know if that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of getting at what you're asking.
It is.
Yeah.
And how is it now?
How is what now?
If you have a question or hold a
Oh,
question,
mhm. Trying to think of. Well, I think maybe an example would be like in retreats that I facilitate. Um, People will have questions or something might come up in a group dialogue or in a private meeting, and that that question, um, I was going to say becomes mine, but I don't mean it in a personal sense, but it it occupies oneself in a way, and uh, and then I usually will write it down or a couple of things like that, and then in a talk, um, the talk will be an opportunity to, in the moment, look at that question um, out of presence, awareness. And I usually say, like, even though I might have jotted it down, it's best to not like spin too much around before giving the talk, because you can give great talk in your head, then you're done. Like
mm-hmm.
as you've gone through, you can go through that. It doesn't mean that things might not spin around a bit and kind of flesh out or look more sort of deeply at the question. But well, there's that too. So whether it's comes out in the talk or sitting, and it's sort of wondering into the question. But it's different than what happened in that particular. I mean, there was like a life and death,
Mm-hmm.
Moment of sorts, metaphorically, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, although it was experienced that way, I think. Um, so there's just that sort of energy of inquiry and um, uh, and then letting something kind of gestate, if that's the right word, and bubble up to see what comes up. And um,
That's different than trying to deliberately think through something.
yeah, when I'm talking about thinking, which has its place. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, thinking through a problem or how to resolve.
So when holding a question in mind or wondering with a question, thoughts may arise. And when we witness the thoughts that arise, or if you're giving a talk, as the talk itself emerges, and you notice this is what's emerging, that's different than deliberately thinking.
Yeah, like right.
Then the natural question would be, how does one know what is arising is a genuine insight or just one of the many thoughts that arise that mean not much?
I guess what do we mean by insight? Um, uh, or maybe you could say what you're pointing to.
Yeah, I can see how the place from which I'm asking the question, I'm already discriminating between the many thoughts that arise as some being valuable and others not. Um, but what I mean is, over the course of the day, there are so many thoughts that just occur, that pass by,
Mhm.
and many of them are just chatter,
Mhm.
noise. But then there are certain thoughts, when they occur, they seem to be like a key that unlocks the door. Um, they present themselves to you as, I guess I've answered my question. So they present themselves to you as a key, as an insight.
Well, they may be an expression of insight, which may be beyond words. So it's not the words necessarily that are the important thing. It's one of the things about, I mean, a talk, as I relate to it, is an expression in the moment of presence. Um, and the the important thing is the presence. Um, and if that's if on the part of the so-called listener is also listening out of presence, the words are really secondary in a way. Um, the best example I can think of is when I would, in attending hundreds of Tony's talks and all, in that mode of listening and her talking, there was no distance. There was no distance. It was one, I don't know, just one mind, one, uh, yeah, it wasn't me and you, me and her. And that was the fundamental thing. it wasn't that words, especially words, could just flow with her in a way of expressing, and it was wonderful. She really had a gift for that. So it wasn't like that wasn't also significant in its own way, but the main thing was, well, she used to like to use the word being in tune, and I would say that that's kind of an in tuneness when the listening and the speaking are all coming out of this presence. I mean, it's not our usual,
Mm-hmm.
speaking and talking and all. When in terms of the experience here of giving a talk in a retreat.
This practice we've been talking about, I presume this is what Tony Packer um, would call meditative inquiry.
It's one of the terms she would use. Yeah. Uh, um, I think says that on the sign leading down the road to Springwater Center for Meditative Inquiry and Retreats.
And it's also on the website. Yeah.
It's on the website.
Yeah. What is the role of effort? Or where does one apply effort, exert effort in this practice, if at all? And what is effortless?
Well, to answer your second question first, well, awareness, presence, still, whatever word is effortless. I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it is isness, beingness. So, what do we mean by effort? Usually, I understand it as putting energy into something to get a particular result, to get somewhere. Think of like learning an instrument, and well, it's tricky because one could even say if one is really into something, one doesn't even think in terms of like making an effort. It's there's just doing. It's just the doing, and so already does effort imply that there's already some resistance to overcome? Just looking at it now, or do we mean just energy? I mean, but maybe if you want to say some.
Well, I think in part you answer the question. Effort would imply resistance to overcome. So maybe where there is resistance, there is a necessity for effort. I'd also think, in part, and I think, you said how if you love an instrument, if you love something, there's no efforting in doing it. But I would assume for many people, cultivating a daily practice or weekly practice of meditation or going for a retreat would take effort. What do you see as values of these things, like a daily meditation practice or regular retreat practice?
I think it's something that one has to find out for oneself if it's if it's helpful, and uh, um, I guess, for myself, I don't think of it in terms of a practice. I don't have a formal sitting practice. I mean, there are times where I'll just um, sit quietly, come in here, sit in the chair there, and just be quiet and still for a while. I think that this noticing what's coming up, and certainly relationship is a mirror, as Krishnamurti would say it, for things coming up in ourselves to look at, and um, that's there. That's a given for me of interest in that. Um, there isn't a motivation operating to get somewhere, so to speak. Talk about getting to Costco or the Y or whatever, but um, uh, but I think it's, as with many questions, we need to find out for ourselves. And what may be helpful and and one may be very drawn to at one time may not be so fulfilling at another time in one's life,
There seems to be, for instance, if someone goes, when people are being taught how to meditate, generally the instruction is observe your breath. And when you get distracted by thoughts, let's say, when you notice yourself getting distracted, come back to your breath. And you do that again and again and again. Every time you find yourself distracted, come back to your breath. And the idea being you are developing or cultivating sustained focus and attention, the capacity to observe in a sustained way. And it seems to me, at least in the way we've talked about it, the meditative inquiry is not so much returning to anything else, but whatever is arising, you observe it. Would that be, does the question make sense? So if a thought arises, memory arises, you don't turn away from it and turn towards something else, but maybe there's effort in not being completely identified with it and maybe gaining a distance, but you are at all times, if it is a formal practice, with whatever is arising.
So what I tend to talk about is, if one sits, if it's possible to sit, assume a comfortable posture, sit still for it's 25-minute rounds at spring water, whatever it is, and to listen, but not just with the ears, but all the senses open to whatever is here. So pretty much what we've been talking about. And inevitably, thoughts are going to come up, come and go, or whatever is here. The sensations, the sounds. If there's some question one has, one can wonder about it, wonder into it, take the time to look at it, which we already also talked about before. If one finds, and people come to the center, come to retreats that already, they have some kind of practice, and if it's not, chanting in the middle of the sitting room, something that's going to disturb them, well, that's fine. It's suggested to if one is interested to try out this sort of just sitting. It's actually a Zen kind of sitting that used to be talked about. Now, if I can remember the name of it,
Shikantaza?
Shikantaza, which is just sitting,
Just sitting. Mm-hmm.
which I think is kind of a description of what I'm saying. But again, if as you described before, something is coming up, and it's more than just thoughts coming and going, but something sort of is grabbing one to sort of wonder about it. But, before we were talking about what sort of grabbed me, and if one has come to meditation or retreat or whatever with a question like, what am I really? What I've read these books. There's Ramana Maharshi was I think his question, or whatever it is, I would say by all means, to take that time out and sit with it, walk with it, eat with it, whatever, if something really grabs one. So that's the way I see it. It's open for each of us to find what we feel we need to do, and if I'm facilitating a retreat, I'm there to look together at whatever comes up, whatever somebody brings, whatever is of interest. Nothing forbidden. I also sometimes say nothing is to be thought of as too superficial or whatever, because I think everything has some connection, some deeper quality to it, or connection.
How does one do this? And you alluded to it a little bit, but say in the context of a relationship, in your relationship with Lisa, how do you bring this meditative inquiry to look at something together? An issue arises that affects both of you, and how would inquiry unfold in that situation?
Well, I will say right up front that I'm blessed and in that Lisa and I were both interested in that, which isn't necessarily that a given, in relationships. So, there is that, and it may come up where we just need to sit down and look at something together. If I've said something that is reactive in some way, and maybe that I didn't even mean it that way, or mean it to be heard a certain way, because we all have our filters, and so to the degree that there's a willingness here and a vulnerability here to look and listen to what Lisa may have to say, um, and the same for her. Um, Even if there's some defensiveness at first and all, but I think essentially underneath it all, there's an interest. So, um, but we also, I think I may have mentioned this, but we also see a couples counselor, who this person that we've been seeing for the last year or so. She's um, uh, well, I've only seen a few, but I think she's rather exceptional in her presence and her being right there, and um, fleshing out, if there's something that we're looking at together uh, with her there. But, it really works best when there's a willingness and an openness here to look. Yeah, to be willing and interested to look and listen.
Right? And it would imply the willingness to look would imply one is not looking to judge. Um, one is not looking to get one up and win, but rather the intent is just to look. The willingness to bring up, share, listen, look.
Yeah, and learn, and not in an accumulative way, but that's another aspect of what one might call meditation, is a learning about oneself, which is, as was mentioned earlier, was learning about all of us because of how human consciousness is shared. Um, so yeah, but yeah, well, it's an interesting thing about being one up, or hmm. I mean, where did that come from? Like, as a question, like not wanting, like there being an interest and not wanting, like if one's sort of needing to be one up, like winning
Yeah,
the
winning.
argument, or
Yeah. I think I don't have that propensity now as much, but
mm-hmm.
um, winning an argument
Mm-hmm.
with my spouse, and
Mm-hmm.
you could see that the the purpose of the conversation was I wanted to win. I wanted to be the person who was right,
That's right. Mm-hmm.
and that in a way hijacks the whole process of, hey, it's us together looking at this issue and um, trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. But it's also something to see that one is wanting to win.
Mm-hmm.
Like just seeing that is um, it's a good insight. There's that operate in.
What is enlightenment or awakening?
I'm trying to think if even use those terms. I mean, I certainly went through going through Zen training and all that was uh, kicked around a fair amount. I'm not sure, even in the earlier times working with Tony, that it was talked about so much. I mean, there's certainly a lot of definitions that are used. Um, I'm trying to look at if there's something about it that resonates here in some fashion to express. Well, I guess in terms of like thinking of awakening or waking up, I could say waking up to the illusion of a me. Um, I think that would be at the core of of what one might call waking up. One could also say being that there's that there's awareness of what's going on in this body mind, so to speak. So, I mean, if we're using the metaphors of waking up, so we're not so much going through life in a kind of dream state, automaticness and reactivity and sort of also taking for granted like that it has to be that way. Um, and enlightenment. I mean, that's a loaded one.
If I was to ask it maybe differently,
Uh,
the stillness that we initially talked about,
uh-huh.
do you think it is possible for one to become completely disidentified with the me circuit permanently and to abide in that stillness completely, so that only the stillness remains? And I'm thinking of uh, someone like Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta Maharaj or um, yeah, those two come to mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although, I I mean, one would have to follow someone around moment to moment to know, I mean, I think even Ramana Maharshi was quoted as saying, it's not that he didn't have, I forgot what he used, so don't quote me on this, but like angry thoughts or whatever, it's just that it didn't act on them,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So the idea of permanently um, like I'm trying to get at what we're saying here. Like there would never be action out of conditioning.
The way I guess I could say the way I see what I understand as ultimately realizable state for a human being, including myself, is that thoughts and actions and feelings and sensations may, as you were saying earlier, when you had that state of darkness or blankness, you have no idea how the body was going on, how you didn't bump into things, or so it's like the body mind does what it does on the first floor, and I live on the second floor in stillness. Do you think that's just an illusion, another
Well,
illusion?
I don't want to say one way or the other. I can only look for myself, my own experience. And I think for the way it's experienced here is that it's a moment to moment thing of, um, things we don't even know might be, uh, could get activated given the right circumstances and whatnot. Not necessarily activated and acted out, but still activated, and or maybe acted out and then coming um, to pause and to see it. Yeah, see it um, as a lifelong uh, looking and watching and interest. Uh, Another question comes up along with that is like, why? I was going to say, why would there be that question? Like, where's the question coming from? But, I can understand where the question is coming from because it would seem like such a harmonious, way to be that nothing could ever disturb. Well, nothing can disturb this stuff. It's the me circuit that might get activated in some way. Um, so yeah, to not um, like to never have things activated. Um, well, maybe you could say something about where the question is coming with it, and I'm not, I'm just interested.
Yeah,
Yeah.
again, it's not even that to never have things get activated, but rather that it's of no concern. And I can say where too, because I've had most of the time, ordinarily in my experience, the me circuit is generally in the foreground.
Hmm.
Um, is in the foreground of my experience, and in the background is what you would call the stillness. And I can, even if I take a moment's pause, intuit the background, the vast stillness in the background. But then there are times when the stillness is in the foreground. It impresses upon consciousness very strongly. It's in the foreground. There's profound silence, stillness, even as things are going on. And the me circuit and the world and everything else seems to recede into the background. And I could observe it or I could not observe it. Um,
But you are it.
the
Is
the
there an
me circuit.
observer? No. Oh, no.
No, I was saying I could
Oh,
observe the me circuit
oh,
or not
me
observe
circuit.
it because
Okay.
in the foreground is yeah, and when it's so strongly in the fore, I don't think I've ever had a realization where there is no duality of me observing the foreground of stillness, where only the stillness is. Like you said, you are it.
The
Um,
stillness.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think I've ever had a such a strong experience where only the stillness is, and I no longer remain as an observer of the stillness.
Mm.
But the stillness does come to the foreground very, very strongly, and the me circuit recedes into the background, almost irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
So then I wonder the possibility of, like, if we were to continue the metaphor of the dream, waking up, and of what consequence is it if the story that was unfolding in the dream continues to unfold or not, or is unfolding or not, what happened of it?
Well, you said a little while ago, like, how did you put it? I can't remember the word you used, but I wish I could. Not inconsequential or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Irrelevant.
Irrelevant. Relevant and irrelevant at the same time. Maybe that's a way of describing all the operating of the me circuit. It's relevant because, you need to do this, do that. And at the same time, it's like everything matters, and at the same time that nothing, in a certain sense, matters. How do they um, intertwine?
And that was the question too, initially,
Oh,
that I had asked. How does
oh,
this world relate to
uh-huh.
the stillness? How do they
Oh,
intertwine?
oh, okay, right. Sound of the fan, sitting here together. Is there an experiencer of this?
What was something that you thought as true when you started out, maybe in the early days, that you now don't see as true?
That having an opening, having some opening, would take care of all of one's problems. That would be it. That would be um, It wasn't just something I mean, there was in the air, so to speak, um, at the time. Now, one to backtrack, one could say that any moment of presence being here where this occupation of the me circuit is quiet and in abeyance for the moment, then what's the problem?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, granted that, but it sort of gets back to what you were asking about earlier. Is it possible to live out of that? Well, we'll find out. I mean, things come up, you know. Never underestimate the power of conditioning, and but not to underestimate that light, underestimate the light of awareness. That's it, or that things can be seen. Um, Sometimes maybe with help. You know, some things are really um, difficult, traumatic. Wiring is of such a nature that there are modalities that you know are found to be helpful um, to open things up.
Is there something specific or a specific question that you are sitting with or observing these days? Or in this stage of your life?
Well, I'm not sure it comes up necessarily more so now than it has before, but um, that uh, one's however one wants to put it, one's demise, whatever, is something that will happen one day. Um, it's kind of a weird way to put it, demise. Um, um, but I think for me, I have some physical issues, and the concern about it kind of comes and goes about will it be, to what degree will it be debilitating, in time, um, and that sort of thing. Um, I'm not sure if that's so much, well, it is a question of sorts, but it's not a question that can necessarily be answered. I think I can just do what I try to do day to day, Um, uh, so, there's that. And, how that um, might impact things, but it's not something I have honestly don't dwell on. But it does come up about um, will something get worse, like, and then what? But, can also see that as like not something that can be answered, and so we just need to watch that and be careful about where that could lead, mentally, and
Mm-hmm.
how that impacts the system, and yeah, and just to the degree that one can, to take care and do what one can to um, uh, take care of this organism and do stuff day to day. But the thing about, that one day being gone, I mean, that comes up every once in a while for a long time. I mean, that's not a recent phenomenon.
Does that bring fear?
um, Not so much. I mean, I don't want to make a blanket statement that it hasn't for moments, but it's more of just like being so, you know. Um, what will come up is like concerns about Lisa, if we joke that, until I teach her how to operate the stereo, I can't go, which still hasn't happened. Maybe you could come over and do it, because if you could operate that thing, you could probably figure it out. But then I also think, I mean, she has a lot of friends and she has a lot of support and all that. So even that, I don't know that has too much weight. Those kind of, things that come up. Um,
I have two closing questions. They're related or they're similar. The first is, having known me now for about a month, maybe.
mhm.
This is the second time we're meeting in person, and I've been coming to the Sunday meditation and dialogue group. Is there something that arises in you about, and even now, if you sit with this question, about what I might need to hear at this time?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that in terms of what I think you might need to hear. I mean, I could say what comes up for me is that
Yeah.
I feel um, I feel it's been wonderful meeting you, getting to know you. I feel like it's been kind of a gift in a way. I'm Well, it's tricky because I'm saying this with no pressure, but I really value your being in their Sunday group and your whatever you've shared, and I'm not the only one that has said that. Um, uh, I just um, I'm just very grateful to get to know you and to have met you and spend time with you. And again, I don't know that that's something that you need to hear from me.
I don't mind hearing it.
Okay, but that's what's coming up. I don't know about what I need. Um, I mean, I feel, but like whether the question has a kind of teacherish quality to it, like and I just don't see myself that way. I mean, I'm not just saying that. I don't feel. Um, yeah, I don't. I just don't. I don't think like that. Um, It's more, and it's more like what I've just shared that comes up. Um, you know, I like being with you, and
Well,
yeah.
the second question
Mm,
related, um, is there something that's coming up in you that you might want to share to whoever might be listening to this?
mm,
Or something, or anything that maybe we didn't cover and maybe is coming up in you that to be shared?
mm. I think I'll go back to what I said a few minutes ago that, comes up um, occasionally about that this, to put it in other words, very temporary. Our our uh, time with each other, uh, and um, okay, if one thinks that way, and if for the moment it brings up fear, whatever, fine, then we could look at that. And I don't mean to just to say it now to trigger whatever, but more that to um, at least for moments in our lives, day to day lives, whether we're with a partner, family, or job, whatever all we find ourselves doing, um, to have some sense of what's really important in this really brief time that we have. Um, yeah, there's so much cruelty and divisiveness unnecessary suffering that people go through and we blindly inflict on each other. So what's what's really important? And I'll follow that with a question to find out who and what one truly is.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.